So I've been thinking about worldviews and the importance of worldviews. So I wanted to ask a question and consider a question. Are there reasons for compassion and comfort in the midst of the coronavirus? So that's the question. So the question really comes down to a philosophical question. And it depends on our answer to a few other questions. It depends on how we see the world. So I want to consider first naturalism. So naturalism believes that nature or the material is all that there is. So I want to read a few quotes from a few naturalists or atheists. So first, a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, which typically I don't quote him favorably, but in this case, I think he's dead on. So he says, "Philosophy always creates the world in its own image. It cannot do otherwise." And so, what kind of world does naturalism create? And so, I think to see that, it's important for us to see a few other quotes from both Nietzsche and then Richard Dawkins as well. So, the question on the table is, do we have reason? Do we have moral grounds for compassion and comfort in the midst of the coronavirus? So I want to go to Nietzsche first, and this is his book Beyond Good and Evil. And so this is paragraph 259. He says this: "Life itself is essentially appropriation, injury, conquest of the strange and weak, suppression, severity. Putting it mildest, exploitation." And then later on in that same paragraph, he says, "Exploitation does not belong to a deprived or imperfect and primitive society. It belongs to the nature of the living being as a primary organic function." And so that is a few things that Friedrich Nietzsche says about life. And I think it helps us to think about comfort and compassion in the midst of coronavirus. So would Nietzsche say that there's compassion and comfort to be found? He would say an emphatic no. In fact, he'd probably say, "Let the weak die. We will be further along as humanity, as the race, if more people die out." And as we'll see, I think Richard Dawkins is not far from him. He says in his book, The God Delusion, starting on page 52, "Could it be that our Good Samaritan urges are misfirings?" And then he says, "The same is true of the urges to kindness, generosity, empathy, pity. We can no more help ourselves feeling pity when we see a weeping unfortunate who is unrelated and unable to reciprocate than we can help ourselves feeling lust for a member of the opposite sex who may be infertile or otherwise unable to reproduce. Both are misfirings, Darwinian mistakes, blessed, precious mistakes." And so we see Dawkins saying that generosity, empathy, pity, kindness are Darwinian mistakes. They might be blessed, precious mistakes, but they are mistakes nonetheless. So Dawkins, a prominent author and biologist, would say that no, there's no ultimate grounds for morality, and there's also no ultimate grounds for comfort. And so that's naturalism. That's atheism. That's the way that I believe that atheists and naturalists must answer that question. There is no comfort and there's no compassion in the midst of the coronavirus. So at least no ultimate comfort, no ultimate compassion. So that's the naturalist. Next is the agnostic. That's someone that doesn't know if there's a God. They're unsure. What I would say to them, it seems that is there compassion? Is there comfort? And I think they would just have to be like, not sure if there's comfort, not sure if we should have compassion. So they're just unsure about that as well. But then when it comes to Christianity, what does Christianity say about compassion and comfort in the midst of the coronavirus? Christians say that, yes, we are to be compassionate because Christ himself, or God in Christ, was compassionate to us. And then for the question of comfort, is there any comfort? Yes, there's comfort because all those who trust in Christ will have the joy and have the solid hope of life forever with him. And we believe that is based in the solid resurrection, the solid historical grounds for believing in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So there's obviously a lot more to be said here, but I've just been thinking about this time that we're going through, the challenge that it is, but then the implications of the way that we see the world. So just took 3 examples. There's obviously a lot more views and ways that people think about the world. But man, I hope if you haven't considered Christianity, that you would seriously consider Christianity, because I believe it gives us solid grounds for compassion and for comfort in the midst of the coronavirus. Thanks.